And we're already in match. Sweet. Oh, spot's already down. Sorry, guys. Here we go. Real life popped up for just a moment. First up, we have the battering ram for the Catskyders. Wow, we don't have time. These are blenderfish, aren't they? Yep, couple of blenderfish. Fancy Fairy looks to be exactly the same as last match. And blenderfish. This is the exact same match as before. Let's get this underway. First up, we have the Aria Bronte coming up behind the Lib GDL. Maybe I'll pop the balloon battering ram. Not doing so well against the Fancy Fairy. The Banshee's big rotation arc's doing quite a bit for it. Armor could get dropped here pretty quickly. Ram comes out from the Aria Bronte, throwing the Lib GDL completely out of the fight. And now is it going to keep following the Lib GDL or go onto the Fancy Fairy? It looks like it's going to have to stay on the Lib GDL because it's turning its gun arcs onto the battering ram. And armor doesn't drop. Not quite. Battering ram moving in on the Fancy Fairy. They're honestly just in kind of a slap fight right now. Fancy Fairy going to drop down behind this battleship. Battering ram going to have a little bit of difficulty following in. No. Perfectly moved, but the Fancy Fairy's just a little bit off to the side. Battering ram goes in a little bit too fast, trying to get around behind the Mobula. Instead, they get bumps. Do a little bit of damage. Battering ram not quite able to get the arcs. They get another ram. They're looking for the arc on the balloon. Now they get it. Took them a little bit to get there, but now they have it. In the meantime, the Aria Bronte and Lib GDL still duking it out. Lib GDL getting the better of the Aria. Should be able to get the crush kill pretty quickly. They're trying for it. Aria getting ground down, and they drop. Nice little nudges from the Lib GDL. In the meantime, Fancy Fairy able to finish off the battering ram off on the side. Nicely engaged by the Storm Ryders. It's surprising how well they're doing in these split engagements. You would think that this build on the Mobula would not be very self-sufficient, just because it has so much piercing damage, not a whole lot of hull break, but they're making it work. I'm still not sure exactly the theory behind it, but it's working. The Aria Bronte losing its armor, nobody on the Banshee just yet. In fact, okay, now they have someone on it. You can kind of see them in the corner. In the meantime, battering ram coming up here on the Fancy Fairy. It's forced to back up behind this little bit of cover. Battering ram again going to overshoot, trying to get behind the Fancy Fairy, and they turn, but the Fancy Fairy backing up just enough. Lib GDL in the meantime coming around on the side of the Aria Bronte. They pop the balloon, and they have the advantage. They're going to drop down right onto them, looking for the kill. They get the balloon up. They pop it again immediately, but the Aria Bronte gets a little bit of ups. Armor drops. They're kerosining backwards, but they're hitting the trade winds very, very hard, and it's going to throw them back down into the dunes. Lib GDL going to drop down. If anything, the trade winds help them there with that ram a little bit. Lib GDL has excellent arcs on the balloon of the Aria. Balloon drops. Armor not looking great. Take a lot of damage. Lib GDL is able to get the kill. In the meantime, the battering ram getting the better. Ah, we just missed it. Fancy Fairy goes down. Battering ram able to get the better of that engagement. Well played on the part of both ships. Lib GDL did a great flanking maneuver. Luyosi is an excellent strategist. Or a tactician, I should say. This is tactician. This is tactics, not strategy. He did an excellent job coming in for the flank, getting the advantage of the blenderfish. I mean, that's how you win in a mirror match like that. You just get the jump on the other one. Fancy Fairy hanging out in the ribs. Looks like, yeah, Lib GDL moves in over close to its ally. Lib GDL moving forward. Not quite. It's being tentative. It knows that it doesn't have to be that aggressive. The Catskyders have got to come to the Storm Ryders, because the long-range Mercury The Mercury's just going to keep hitting. LibGDL thinking about going in. Honestly, I think it's just playing threat right now. 5 minutes already down on the clock. Not too much time. Battering ram taking damage here. Fancy Fairy throwing out the Gatling. And it's hitting the Aria. Doing a little bit. Do they have Lesmach in there? Yeah, they've got Lesmach in there. Jarman Kell, in the meantime, running heavy clip. They're looking for a lot of range on those usually close to mid-range weapons. LibGDL has moved in, but the battering ram says, nope. Karenay gonna deal with them, and the LibGDL, oh no. They've hit a little bit of geometry. The battering ram gonna take advantage of that extra little bit of damage, but they lose... don't quite lose armor. They're actually doing okay as the Hades comes in. Not gonna do that much damage to the balloon. As the battering ram continues to do well on LibGDL, but a few shots go into the hull, and they bring down the hull. The battering ram armor comes back up just in time. Are they going to bump the battleship? Not quite. They hover right over it, and LibGDL sinks down into the dunes. Battering ram looking to come up behind, trying to get it. They're going to get the turn. They're going to get the carronade shot, but LibGDL has a little bit of momentum going up, but it just sends them into the geometry. They bump. Battering ram has an excellent angle right now, and they shove them right into the dunes and nuzzle them to death. In the meantime, the Fancy Fairy getting the better of the Aria. Aria being forced to back up here. It can just wait for its ally, the battering ram, to rise up and assist. But that's a lot of damage coming out from the Fancy Fairy. Armor down. Banshee waiting for its moment. Doing quite a bit of... didn't do that much that time. Just pecked a little bit. The armor comes back up as the battering ram comes in here. Nice and fresh and ready to take out the Fancy Fairy. They're looking for the ram. Fancy Fairy drops down. They lost their balloon. They bring it back up. Battering ram bumps as well, though, and they lose their armor. Banshee just barely out of arc to get the last hit. And the Aria of Bronte coming in to help, but LibGDL spawns in just a little bit northwest. Aria of Bronte looking for the ram, trying to throw them in the geometry, but the Fancy Fairy is remarkably heavy. Aria of Bronte going to drop down. They get their balloon back up, but the LibGDL is right there to bring it down again. They want to Goomba stomp them into the dunes. In the meantime, battering ram moving in on the Fancy Fairy, but the Fancy Fairy has something to say about that. They're looking for the kill. Can't get it. They get bumped up. Fancy Fairy is getting ground up against the geometry. They lose their balloon, and they get ground into the ribs. LibGDL, in the meantime, finishes off the battering ram. Or no, not the battering ram. The other one. Battering ram, in the meantime, it has no balloon, it has no armor, it has no hull. One little bit of damage more will do it. They get the ram, but it goes into the balloon. The battering ram is still alive, juggling the damage just right. Now they lose their balloon again, but I don't know how much longer they'll be able to stay up. Goomba Stomp from the LibGDL will send them hard into the dunes. Armor still up, balloon's still up, but the Fancy Fairy's here as well. Storm Ryders pick up game number 2 in a much closer match. Well played by the Storm Ryders. Catskyders giving them a run for their money, but in the end, Leosi and Dementio, very well established pilots, just a little bit too much.